Cho Min-sok died on Wednesday. Not heroically. Not in battle with a mutated bear the size of a truck. Not saving anyone. Not with a weapon in hand and a beautiful speech on his lips. He slipped on a wet pipe in an industrial zone of Incheon, hit the back of his head on the corner of an iron box, and simply blacked out. Quietly, without a sound, like turning off a light. His last thought was, should have taken more water. Up to that moment, he had lasted 211 days. That was a record among everyone he knew. Not because he was the strongest? No. Not the fastest? No. Not the luckiest. Simply, Cho Min-sok had worked for 7 years as a warehouse manager at a wholesale depot, and over those 7 years had firmly grasped one thing. The one who survives is not the strongest. The one who survives is the one with supplies. Food, water, medications, tools, information. He knew how to store, how to rotate, how to count stock, how to plan 3 weeks ahead, when everyone around was thinking only about today. 211 days on that, and died of thirst, because he miscalculated the route of a crossing and hoped to find water along the way. Should have taken more water. The darkness came softly and then, as sometimes happens with darkness, it ended. A place that has no name, a time that does not exist. Min-sok stood in a space with no walls, no floor, no ceiling. Just white, everywhere, even neutral, unreal white. He looked at his hands. Intact. Not dehydrated, not bruised from the last few days, just his hands. All right, he said aloud. His voice sounded normal, though there were no walls for it to echo off. So, this is what it looks like. Not exactly, a voice replied. Min-sok turned around. There stood an old man. Not frightening, not majestic. Just an old man. About 75, short, in a worn gray suit that had been fashionable about 30 years ago. A folder of papers in his hand. Thick-lensed glasses on his nose. A face like a man who works in accounting and grew tired of everything back in the last century. He was leafing through the papers in the folder with the air of an official at a routine inspection. Cho Min-sok, the old man said. Not a question, just a confirmation. 29 years old, warehouse manager, 211 days of survival in the initial crisis period. It's called an apocalypse, Min-sok corrected. It's called a crisis period, the old man repeated firmly. Terminology matters. I am the registrar. Not a name, a position. I record iterations and make decisions on regression. Regression, Min-sok repeated slowly. A return to the past, repeating the run. The old man turned a page. In your case, 90 days before the start of the crisis period. Min-sok stood quietly, processing. Why? The old man raised his gaze above his glasses. Because you had the best group survival coefficient among all regression candidates in this cycle. 211 days, 7 survivors under your leadership at peak, minimal losses from preventable causes. I died of thirst. Yes, the registrar agreed without the slightest sympathy. That lowered your final score. But the overall indicator is still sufficient for regression. Min-sok looked at him. Sufficient for regression. Sounds like a resume that doesn't get the job. You are being hired, said the registrar. That is why you are here. And what do I get in return? The old man leafed through the papers again, found the right page, turned it toward Min-sok. On the sheet was written one word, storage. Spatial storage, said the registrar, tucking the folder under his arm. Personal, starting volume, 50 cubic meters with the possibility of expansion. Time inside is stopped. Contents do not spoil. Min-sok looked at the sheet. This? He searched for words. This is not a weapon. No, this is not a superpower. Technically, no, this is a warehouse. Yes, said the registrar. Personal, non-perishable, with automatic cataloging. Min-sok was silent for a few seconds. You gave a warehouse manager a warehouse. We give what matches the host's profile, said the registrar without a trace of irony. Your profile is logistics, inventory, resource management. The system amplifies what already exists. It does not create something new. And what did the other regressants get? The registrar opened the folder again, scanned it quickly. A combat system, a stat upgrade system, a skill system, a summoning system. He closed the folder. All of them, incidentally, survived an average of 37 days. A pause. 37 days against 211, Min-sok said slowly. Exactly, said the registrar. Killing a monster is easy when you are stronger. It is harder to have a bandage when the monster gets you anyway. And water when the route turns out to be longer than planned. A long silence. Point taken, said Minsock quietly. Yes, all right. He exhaled. Conditions? Limitations? Non-living objects only. Physical contact required when placing. Retrieval requires 2 to 3 seconds of concentration. The registrar produced the last sheet, and one condition that is not technical. What is it? The old man looked at him over his glasses. In the previous iteration, 7 people survived under your leadership at peak. By day 211, 3 remained. A pause. The system is not given so that one person with very good supplies survives. Is that clear? Minsock looked at him. Clear? Good, said the registrar. He put away the papers, took off his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose with the expression of a man whose workday should have ended long ago. Then good luck to you, Cho Minsock. Wait, said Minsock. I have a question. 1. Why exactly 90 days? Why not straight to day X? The registrar put his glasses back on, looked at him with the expression of someone who had just been asked something obvious. Because supplies cannot be stockpiled in a single day, he said simply, even with your skills. And he disappeared. The white space collapsed. Seoul Cho Minsock's apartment. 7:04 in the morning, Monday, September 14th. Minsock opened his eyes. The ceiling. White. A crack near the left corner in the shape of the letter L. An alarm clock with a cat on the dial, 7:04, that he had bought 3 years ago at a sale and had regretted the decision ever since. He lay quietly, listening. The downstairs neighbor was frying onions, every morning without exception like a ritual. Cars on the street. A pigeon on the windowsill, small, ordinary, non-aggressive, sat and looked through the glass. Live while you can, Minsock thought. Got up, washed his face, put the kettle on. While it was boiling, he stood at the window and looked out at the morning Seoul. 90 days, he thought. The first time I had no warning, no system, no plan. Just woke up one day and the world was already ending. And still, 211 days. Now, 90 days, a system, and the memory of 211 mistakes. I wonder if that will be enough. The kettle boiled. He made coffee, sat down at the table, opened a notebook. It was then quietly, unobtrusively, like a notification from an app you forgot to install, that text appeared before his eyes. System storage. Activation. Host confirmed Cho Minsock. Regression successful, iteration 2. System activated. Storage, current parameters, volume 50 cubic meters. Catalog entries, 0 preservation. Active available functions, place retrieve catalog, assess. Note, the system remembers iteration 1. Host died from dehydration. First recommendation, water. Minsock read it, finished his coffee, picked up the mug and tried. Mentally, like opening a drawer, place. The mug disappeared with a soft sound of air filling a void. Catalog, update. Item number 1 added, ceramic mug, 1 piece. Contents, coffee, 120 milliliters, 71 degrees Celsius. Priority rating, low, but a good choice for a first test. A good choice for a first test, he read aloud. A system with personality. Excellent. He retrieved the mug. The coffee was the same temperature at 71 degrees. As if not a second had passed, he took a sip, sat quietly. Time inside is stopped. That means canned goods will never spoil. Antibiotics will be fresh in a year. Water will stay clean. In the first life, half the losses were from expired medications and spoiled food. Now that won't happen. The registrar said, the system amplifies what already exists. It does not create something new. That means I still have to buy, find, carry. The system does not produce food from thin air, it only stores. 90 days. Time to work. He opened the notebook to a blank page. Wrote at the top in large letters, iteration 2, plan, underlined it twice. And began to write, day -90 to -60. The first thing Minsock did was compile 2 lists. List 1, what to buy. List 2, who to find. Because in the first life he had understood one thing. Supplies without people is just slow loneliness. People without supplies is fast death. Both are needed. List, what to buy priority. A, drinking water, 500 liters, Died of thirst the first time, never again. High-calorie canned goods. 400 kilograms, broad-spectrum antibiotics, maximum I can find. Wound dressings, plenty salt. 50 kilograms, currency of the apocalypse. In the first life, I traded it for medications, information, and once for a person who was nearly abandoned. Priority B, a decent knife. An axe rope, 200 meters minimum duct tape. Sounds funny, but seriously. Duct tape solved problems that seemed unsolvable. Paper maps. Phones will die. There will be no internet seeds. Rice, beans, potatoes. Priority. C. Books on medicine, botany, chemistry. Spare shoes? 3 pairs of different types. A radio. He looked at the list. 50 kilograms of salt, he said quietly. Good thing I live alone. The procurement went simply. At the wholesale depot where he worked, no one was surprised by a manager taking goods in large batches. A corporate event, he would say when asked. No one asked about the event. A new batch every day, every 100 entries in the catalog, plus a cubic meter to the storage. By day 20, the storage looked like this. Storage status, day -70. Catalog entries, 634 volume, 56.34 cubic meters. Water, 210 liters of 500 liters. 42% canned goods, 134 kilograms of 400 kilograms, 33% medications, 14 kilograms, salt, 31 kilograms of 50 kilograms, 62% tools, 41 entries. Host's financial reserve, critically low. Warning, at the current rate of expenditure, funds will run out in 18 days. I know, said Minsock. Recommendation, take out a loan. He stared at this for a second. You are recommending that I take out a loan 70 days before the apocalypse. A loan that will not need to be repaid. Banks will cease operations on the 3rd day after day X. The math is simple. A long pause. This is... Minsook nodded slowly. This is cynical and logical, and I hate that you are right. The next day, he took out consumer loans at 3 different banks. For apartment renovation, he wrote in the application, renovation is technically true. Just the renovation will take place in a post-apocalyptic world and concerns not the apartment, but the survival of human civilization. Day -65. Money, sorted. Supplies on track. Now for the second list. List. Who to find one. Lee Hana, 27, veterinarian. Clinic in the Hapcheon district. Arrow. In the first life, met her on day 34. Knows mutant anatomy better than any doctor, because they are still animals, just large and mean. Can stop bleeding, suture wounds, administer anesthesia from whatever is at hand. Only downside, she feels sympathy even for mutated creatures. That creates complicated moments. So Ichan, 44. Former military supermarket security guard. Mapo district. Day 11 of the first life. The only person I trusted in close combat. Died on day 156. Don't think about that now. Think about it. Prevent it. Park Jong, 31. Pharmacist chemist. Pharmacy in the Xiaoqiu district. Day 67. Too late. Can make antiseptics from household chemicals and knows the toxicology of mutant venoms. Yes, she researched them voluntarily. That's either madness or genius. Most likely both. Guan Yanja, 58. Retired army cook. Day 78. Also too late. Cooks from things that cannot be cooked from. That sounds strange, but on day 90 when the supplies were down to just soy and something unidentifiable, she made something edible. Still don't know how. He stopped at the 5th point. Stared at the blank line for a long time. Wrote slowly, 5, and Junso, 17. High school student. Arrow, no. Crossed it out. Maybe. Crossed it out again. If he finds us himself, don't turn him away. Underlined it. Closed the notebook. Lee Hana was found where she should have been. In a small veterinary clinic in an alley in Hapcheon. The sign was modest. Inside it was clean, smelling of disinfectant and faintly of animals. At the reception desk sat a large ginger cat. It looked at Minsock with the expression cats use when looking at people, that is, as an optional part of the space. Minsock looked at the cat. The cat looked at Minsock. You're still normal, Minsock said to the cat quietly. Enjoy it while you can. Excuse me? A girl in a white coat came out from behind the door. Short, hair tied back, a stain of something green on the coat. Do you have an appointment? No, said Minsok. I don't have a pet. Then how can I help you? No way, he said. Not yet. She looked at him. That's an interesting way to start a conversation. I know. He sat down on a visitor's chair. Listen for 5 minutes. If you decide I'm crazy, say so and I'll leave. Are you crazy? By some criteria? Yes. By others? No. He pulled a sheet from his pocket. This is a list of behavioral symptoms you will start noticing in patients over the next few weeks. Unprovoked aggression, changes in feeding patterns, abnormal increases in physical indicators. If you notice them, call. He placed the sheet on the counter, a business card beside it. Hana picked up both, read in silence. Where did this come from? Long story. I'm listening. Not now, said Minsok. For now, just remember my face. In a few weeks, when the symptoms appear, you'll know who to call. Hana looked at him over the sheet. You come to a stranger's veterinary clinic, say you don't have a pet, leave a list of symptoms, and ask me to remember your face. Yes, and leave. Yes, why? Minsok stood up. Because the next time we meet, there won't be time for long explanations. Better that you already know I'm not an enemy. He walked toward the exit. Wait, said Hana. He turned. These symptoms? She was looking at the sheet. I saw something similar last week, in 2 different patients. I thought it was a coincidence. Minsok looked at her. Earlier than in the first life. The mutation had started earlier. It's not a coincidence, he said quietly. Call when you see it again. He left. So Ichan worked as a security guard at a supermarket. Large, calm, with the face of a man who had seen a great deal and had long since stopped being surprised by anything. Minsok entered the supermarket, picked up a basket, walked the aisles. Observed. Ichan stood at the entrance. Not just standing, watching. The perimeter, the people, the movement. A former soldier doesn't stop being a soldier just because he became a supermarket guard. That was readable instantly. At the exit, Minsok stopped beside him. So, Ichan si, he said. Ichan looked at him calmly, appraisingly. Do we know each other? No, not yet. Minsok held out a business card. My name is Cho Minsok. In 2 months, something serious is going to begin. I need a man with your experience. Ichan looked at the card. Did not take it. Something serious, like what? An apocalypse, said Minsok. Animals will mutate. They'll get larger and smarter. They'll start hunting people. Urban infrastructure will collapse in the first 2 weeks. A long pause. You're serious right now. Completely. How do you know? Long story that I'll tell when you have time. Minsok placed the card on the counter beside him. For now, just remember the name. If in 2 months I turn out to be wrong, throw the card away. If I turn out to be right, call. And if you're crazy, then you lose nothing, said Minsok. Throw the card away sooner. Ichan looked at him, then slowly picked up the card, put it in his pocket. What kind of apocalypse, he said. Not a question, but something between surprise and professional interest. Insects and rodents first, then birds, then everything else. Insects. Swarm type, intelligent, several times larger than normal. Minsok looked straight at him. Hornets the size of a fist is still manageable. Cockroaches are a different story. Ichan was silent for a moment. Cockroaches. I did say long story. Ichan looked at him with an expression that was impossible to classify precisely. Go, he said finally. I'll think about it. Park Jung-hui was found at a small pharmacy in Seocho. Minsok came in the evening shortly before closing. The pharmacy was nearly empty. Behind the counter, a woman of about 30, in a white coat, was reading something. She looked up. Good evening. How can I help? I need broad-spectrum antibiotics, said Minsok. Plenty. Prescription? No. Then no. I know. That's why I came to you personally, rather than just to any pharmacy. Jung-hui looked at him. What do you mean to you personally? It means I need someone who understands pharmacology and toxicology and can work with what's available. He placed a sheet on the counter. A different one this time. This is a list of chemical compounds that neutralize the venom of mutated hornets. If in 2 months this list becomes useful to you, I need your help. Jong picked up the sheet. Read slowly. Venom of mutated hornets, she repeated quietly. Yes, this is... She looked at the list. This is a modified neurotoxin. Where did you get this formula? Long story. You say that a lot? Often, Min-sok agreed. Because it's true. The story is long and it's more convenient to tell when there's time. Jong looked at the list, then at him. If this is true, the antidote can be synthesized from 3 components available in any pharmacy. I know, said Min-sok. That's exactly why I'm here. A long pause. She folded the sheet. Put it in the pocket of her coat. Come in a week, she said. You'll tell me the long story. 2 weeks before day X. On day -14, 2 things happened. The first, the storage exceeded 100 cubic meters. Storage status, day -14. Catalog entries, 5,847 volume, 108.47 cubic meters. Water, 890 liters. Checkmark canned goods, 1,240 kilograms. Checkmark medications, antibiotics, 47 courses, antiseptics, 23 liters, analgesics, antihistamines. Checkmark salt, 68 kilograms, checkmark. Tools, 234 entries, checkmark seeds. 18 varieties, checkmark clothing/footwear. 67 entries, checkmark books, 43 entries. Overall readiness rating, 78%. Insufficient, fuel, generator, radio communications. The second thing, Lee Hana called. Remember you came by, she said without preamble. Left a list of symptoms. I remember. Today they brought in a Labrador. The owner said it was a calm dog, had never bitten anyone. This morning, it bit a neighbor's arm down to the bone for no reason. A pause. The dog weighs 42 kilograms. A standard Labrador weighs 30 at most. Min-sok closed his eyes. 2 weeks before day X. Already. Hanasi, he said. Remember I said remember my face so you'd know I'm not an enemy? Yes. Now it's time for the long story. When do you finish work? In an hour. I'll be outside the clinic. Bring things for a few days. A pause. Are you serious? 42 kilograms. A Labrador, said Min-sok. Yes, serious. Another pause. All right, she said. That same evening, Min-sok gathered all 4 of them. Hana, Ichan, Jong at the base. Base is a strong word for it. A warehouse in an industrial district that he had rented 3 weeks ago under the pretense of storing personal belongings. The owner didn't ask questions. Money up front is a solid argument. They sat on crates by the light of a lantern. Min-sok stood before them. He looked at 4 people who had come because they believed enough to come, but not yet enough to accept everything. Long story, he said. I promised. Here it is. And he told them everything. The first life, the regression, the white space and the old man in the gray suit, the system, 90 days of preparation, day Z, the 13th of December, less than 2 weeks away. He spoke evenly, without excess. The way you write a report, facts, figures, conclusions. When he finished, the silence lasted a long time. Ichan spoke first. So you already died? Yes, and came back. Yes, and now you have a system that stores resources? Yes, a pause. Show us. Min-sok nodded. He retrieved from the storage one by one. A crate of canned goods, a 20-liter canister of water, a box of medications, and last, 1 pack of salt. Quietly, without effort, from the air. The silence shifted in quality. All right, said Ichan after a pause. I'm in. Jong looked at the medications, picked up the box, opened it, checked methodically like a professional. All of this is fresh, she said, quietly in surprise. Antibiotics with an expiration date 2 years from now. They should have degraded if you purchased them a month ago under non-standard conditions. Time inside has stopped, said Min-sok. She looked up. So the medicines don't expire. Ever. A long pause. I'm in, she said. Hana sat quietly, looking at the canister of water. You said in the first life you died from dehydration? Yes. And the first thing you put in the storage in the second iteration was water? No, Min-sok said honestly. The first thing was a mug of coffee. I was testing the system. Hana looked at him, then suddenly laughed. Briefly, sincerely. All right, she said. I'm in too. Guanyanja came last. Minsok had found her through a catering advertisement. A woman of 58 with the face of someone who had cooked buckwheat on a field kitchen in minus 20 degrees and considered that good weather. She listened to everything in silence, without questions. When Minsok finished, she asked one thing. How much grain do you have? About 80 kilograms. Not enough. Need 200. She stood up. When do we start? 12 days from now. Then we have 12 days to get another 200 kilograms of grain. She looked at him. Why are you just standing there? Write it down. Minsok opened his notebook. Guan Yonja. In the first life I found her on day 78. That was one of the most costly mistakes. Minsok woke at 6 in the morning, looked at his phone. The 13th of December. Got up, washed his face, dressed, layers, proper footwear, a backpack packed a week ago. Went to the kitchen, put the kettle on. System, storage. Day Z, today. Estimated time of event onset, 9 to 11 based on iteration 1 data. Current storage status, volume 134.6 cubic meters. Entries, 8,203 water, 1,240 liters. Canned goods/food, 2,870 kilograms. Medications full set fuel, 300 liters. Tools 412 entries. Weapons knife times 4, axe times 2, crossbow times 1, Ichan insisted. Readiness rating 91%. Group 5 people, all notified, all at the base. Note, you are more prepared than anyone else on the planet right now. That does not mean it will be easy. Minsok read the last line. I know, he said. The kettle boiled. He brewed coffee. At 8:47, the phone vibrated. Hana. Clinics are calling each other. Mass cases of aggression in domestic animals all across the city. Is this it? He wrote back. Yes, get to the base, now. At 9:03, in the silence of a morning soul, somewhere to the east, a sound arose. Not an explosion, not a siren, a swarm. Like the hum of high-voltage wires, only alive, pulsing, growing. The sound of millions of insects that had simultaneously realized they were no longer small. Minsok stood at the window and listened. Here we go, he thought. It has begun. He picked up his backpack, left the apartment. On the staircase, the neighbor with Pupsik. The Pomeranian looked at Minsok. With different eyes now, those eyes too attentive. Slightly larger than 2 weeks ago. Good morning, said the neighbor. Have you been keeping him indoors, Minsok asked. Pupsik. Yes, mostly. Good. He looked at the Pomeranian. Don't go outside today, at all. Neither you nor him. Close the windows. Stuff the gaps under the door with any fabric. What? Why? Insects, said Minsok. Large ones. They'll be everywhere soon. The neighbor looked at him. Young man, do you have food at home? Well, yes, for how many days? Maybe 5 days or so. Minsok opened the storage. He retrieved, right there on the staircase from the air, a crate of canned goods and a 20-liter canister. The neighbor gasped. Pupsik growled. Quietly, low. Nothing like a normal Pomeranian. Take this, said Minsok, setting the crate in front of her. That'll last 2 weeks. Don't open the door for anyone. If you hear swarm sound, lie on the floor, away from the windows. He headed downstairs. Where did that come from? She called after him. Long story, he replied without turning back. Outside it was still quiet. Ordinary December soul, people were heading to work. Cars, cafes were opening. No one knew yet. Minsok walked quickly toward his car at the parking lot. 20 minutes to the base. He passed the trash bins by the next building and stopped. On the lid of a bin sat a cockroach, the size of his palm. It sat motionless, looking at Minsok with 2 compound eyes, each reflecting several versions of his face. Minsok looked at the cockroach. The cockroach looked at Minsok. Well, hello there, said Minsok. The cockroach did not reply, but its antennae moved. Minsok walked around the bin in a wide arc and kept going. System storage. Host, first mutant recorded. Type, insect, common cockroach. Size, non-standard. Behavior, observational. Threat assessment, low for now. Solitary, note. For now is the key phrase. Minsok dismissed the system screen. Day Z, he thought, getting into the car. Here you are. He started the engine. In the first life, at this moment, I was standing in a supermarket not understanding what was happening for another 4 hours. Lost that time completely. Now I have a base, 5 people, 130 cubic meters of supplies, and the memory of what comes next. That should be enough. Probably. He pulled out of the parking lot. Somewhere above the city, the sound of the swarm was growing. Day Z had begun. At the same time, somewhere in the eastern district of Seoul. 16-year-old Junso stood at the window of his room and looked out at the street. On the outer windowsill sat a sparrow, an ordinary gray sparrow, only the size of a pigeon, and it was looking at Junso the way birds don't usually look. Junso slowly stepped back from the window, found his phone, typed in the first contact he found online when searching, "What to do if birds have mutated?" There were no search results. He texted his mom. Mom didn't reply. The sparrow on the windowsill waited. The base greeted him with the smell of coffee and tension. All 4 were already there. Hana sat against the wall with a tablet, flipping through veterinary manuals. Jong was sorting medications by category, methodically, without unnecessary movement, like someone who needs to keep their hands busy while their head works. Yonja stood at the gas burner, stirring something in a large pot. Ichan stood at the entrance, back to the wall, facing the door, hands free. A military habit, doesn't switch off. Minsok entered, closed the door, slid the bolt. "Everyone's here," he said. "Good. You can hear it outside," said Ichan. Swarm, east of the city. "I know, that's the beginning." Minsok took off his jacket, hung it up. First 3 hours. Insects. Swarm type. Hornets, wasps, something like flies, but not flies. Singles. Manageable. Swarms, no. "How big?" asked Hana without looking up. Hornets. Fist-sized. Wasps. Slightly smaller. Sting penetrates standard clothing. A pause. Leather does not penetrate. Dense canvas does not penetrate. Hana looked up. "You bought leather jackets in advance. 5 of them. Different sizes." He opened the storage. From the air, 5 bundles appeared. HNC, try the first one. Storage. Retrieved. Leather jacket. Size XL. 1 piece. Leather jacket. Size M. 2 pieces. Leather jacket. Size S. 1 piece. Leather gloves. 5 pairs. Protective goggles. 5 pieces. Ichan picked up a jacket, examined it, nodded. "Not bad." "Eyes are a separate problem," said Minsok. "Hornets aim for the face. Not instinctively, deliberately. They've gotten smarter. Goggles must be worn outside at all times." "At all times," said Jong. "At all times," Minsok confirmed. "In the first life, I lost someone on day 18 because they took off their goggles for 3 minutes." A pause. 3 minutes? Silence. Yonja lifted the pot off the heat. Turned around. "Food is ready. This isn't the time for food first," she repeated firmly. "Hungry people make bad decisions. This is not up for discussion." Minsok looked at her for a moment. "All right, that is exactly why she is in the group." They ate quickly. Rice with canned beef, hot tea. Simple food, but proper. Yonja distributed portions in silence. Sat down last. Outside the warehouse walls, the swarm sound was growing. Now from several directions at once. Hana ate and read at the same time. She looked up. "I found something interesting in the behavioral patterns of insects, the mutated hornets. They're not just larger. Their nervous systems have changed." She held up the tablet. "Here, a report from a veterinary laboratory in Busan. It came in an hour ago. They studied one captured hornet and..." "They captured a mutated hornet?" said Minsok. "Yes, alive? Yes, in the lab?" "Yes, how are they doing now?" A pause. The report stopped mid-sentence. Silence at the table. "Understood," said Minsok. "What did they manage to write before it stopped?" "That the neural network of the insect was actively restructuring even after capture." Hana looked at the tablet. They recorded growth in synaptic connections in real time. The hornet was literally getting smarter while they were studying it. Which means they continue to mutate. She closed the tablet. "They didn't finish changing on day Z. They are changing right now." Silence. Ichan set down his mug. "So in a week, they'll be smarter than they are today?" "Probably. And in a month?" "I don't know," said Hana. "No one knows. These are the first data points." Minsok looked down at the table. "In the first life, I didn't know this so early. I found out on day 42, by which point it was already obvious. By then we had already lost 2 people, and both times because we underestimated the speed of adaptation. Now it's day 1, we know. Good, he said. This changes priorities. He looked at the group. In the first life, I built defenses against what I could see. Now we need to build against what it will be in a month. How do you build defenses against the unknown? Asked Gyun quietly without challenge. You build with margin, said Minsok. Always with margin. At 11:23, someone knocked outside. Everyone fell silent. Ichan was already at the door, and silently, quickly, with that quality of movement that only comes from people who have had real training. 3 knocks, a pause, then 2 more. Is that a code? Jong asked quietly. No, said Minsok, just knocking. Then why aren't you opening? Because first you need to know who it is. He approached the door. A thin ventilation opening at the doorframe, left there on purpose, allowed him to hear the outside. Who's there? My name is Junso, said the voice. Young, frightened, trying its hardest not to sound frightened. 16 years old. I live 2 blocks from here. I saw you come in. Outside. Something is happening out there, please. Minsok stood at the door. Ichan looked at him questioningly. And Junso. 16 years old. In the first life, I found him on day 41. Thin, alone, hiding in the ventilation ducts of a shopping center. He had survived 41 days on his own on whatever he could find. No group, no system, nothing. 41 days, a 16-year-old kid. I wrote in my list only if he finds us himself. Here he is. He found us. Open it, Minsok said to Ichan. Are you sure? Yes. Ichan opened it, keeping to the side of the doorframe in case there was more than one person outside. Outside stood a boy, tall for his age, thin, in a school jacket that was clearly not warm enough for the weather. Hair disheveled, phone with a cracked screen in his hand, a small backpack on his back. He looked at Ichan, then at Minsok behind his shoulder, with the expression of someone who had been running for a long time and finally stopped. There's a bird, he said. Large, a crow. It was following me from my house. I don't know why. I was just walking and it... Come in, said Minsok. Junso came in. Ichan closed the door. The boy stood in the middle of the warehouse and looked at the people, the crates, the pot of food, the leather jackets laid out on the table. You were prepared? He said slowly. Yes, said Minsok. You knew this was going to happen? Yes. How? Long story. Junso looked at him for a moment. I have time, he said. Yonja was already setting out another mug. At noon, the swarm reached its peak. It was audible even inside the closed warehouse. A low, pulsing drone, as if the air outside had become alive and malevolent. Minsok sat near the ventilation opening and listened. Systematizing. 3 separate swarms, east, north, southwest. The swarm was moving through the city by sectors, not chaotically, methodically, like sweeping through territory. In the first life, I only understood this on the 3rd day, that they weren't just flying around, they were searching, checking every block, smart. System storage. Situation assessment. Day Z 1204. Recorded 3 active swarms within a 2-kilometer radius. Threat to base, medium, structure is sealed, ventilation blocked. Recommendation for the next 6 hours. 1. Do not go outside. 2. Check the perimeter for airtightness. 3. Inventory insect bite medications. Recommendation for the remainder of Day X. Prepare a contingency plan in case the swarm discovers the base. Note: probability of base discovery within the first 24 hours, 23%. That is not 0. 23%, Minsok said aloud. What? Hana responded. Nothing. We checked the perimeter. Ichan was already walking along the walls, stopping, listening, touching. Here, he said, pointing to a corner. A gap at the base. Small, but there. Minsok retrieved mounting foam from the storage. Jong, who it turned out could do many practical things beyond pharmacology, took the can and began sealing it. I was in a construction club at school, she said without turning, preempting the question. Don't ask why. I'm not asking, said Minsok. My dad wanted a son, she added. That's why. I didn't ask. I know, just explaining. Junso sat in the corner and watched everyone. Didn't speak, didn't get in the way, just observed. Memorizing. Minsok noticed. In the first life, he had done the same thing for the first 2 days. Just watched. Then he started asking questions. Smart questions. The kind that showed that in 2 days of silence, he had thought through the situation more deeply than some adults had in a week. On the third day of the first life, Junso had drawn a diagram of the swarm's movements from memory, based solely on what he had heard through the walls of the base. The diagram turned out to be 80% accurate. Minsok came over, sat down beside him. "How did you end up in this district?" he asked. "I was heading to the other side of the city," said Junso. "To a friend. He hasn't been answering since morning." "Parents?" A pause. Mom was at work, not answering. He looked at the floor. Dad is on a business trip in Busan." Minsok heard that behind the word "not answering," there was something more than just no signal. But he didn't press. "The crow that was following you," he said. "How large?" Like a small dog, maybe." Junso looked up. "Is that normal? Do crows look like that now?" "Yes," said Minsok. "It's mutation. All animals. Today is the first day." "And what comes next?" "Next, it gets worse. At first, then we adapt." Is that the 5 of you?" "6, Minsok corrected. "You're here." Junso looked at him. "You don't know me. I know enough." "How?" "Long story," said Minsok. "But the short version, you lasted 41 days on your own under significantly worse conditions. That's enough." Junso frowned slowly. "You said lasted. Past tense. But this is only the beginning of the first day." "Yes, which means you know what will happen." "Some things. So then," Junso went quiet, thinking. "Then my mom?" A long pause. Minsok looked at him. In the first life, Junso's mother survived. She was found on day 23 in a shopping center with a large group of people. They were reunited on day 61. "But I don't know if it will be the same this time. I've changed too much." "I don't know for certain," he said honestly. "But the first time, she survived." Junso slowly exhaled. "All right," he said quietly, not calmly, but he accepted it. "All right." At 1540, something outside changed. Minsok felt it before he understood it. Something in the character of the swarm sound. The tone had shifted. Lower, more focused. "Ichan si," he said. "I hear it," came the reply from the door. "They're changing direction." "Toward us?" A pause. "Possibly. Not certain yet." Minsok stood. "Everyone, leather jackets, goggles. Right now." "Are we going out?" asked Hana. "No, but if they find a gap, we need to be ready." System storage. Base discovery probability updated. 23% to 61%. Reason, swarm has shifted pattern from sweeping to source localization. Presumed source of interest, smell of food, Guanyonja's pot. Recommendation, isolate source of smell. "Yonjasi," said Minsok. "Already done," she replied. The lid had been on the pot since a minute ago. She looked at him with an expression that said, "I wasn't born yesterday." "Windows?" asked Ichan. "Closed, ventilation blocked," said Minsok. "But there is one problem." "What is it?" "The ventilation duct on the roof. In the first life, we closed it only on the 3rd day. I didn't manage to in time this iteration." A pause. "It's open," asked Jong. "There's a grate, but a fist-sized hornet fits through a standard ventilation grate." Silence. "How much time do we have?" asked Ichan. "If they found the duct, 3 to 4 minutes before the first ones arrive." "Where is the duct?" "Center of the roof. A square hatch on the attic. The attic is through the door at the end of this hall." Ichan was already moving. "I'll close it." "Not alone," said Minsok. "If there's already one up there, and that's bad, then 2 of us." Minsok looked at the group. Not Junso, too young, and it's the first day. Not Hana. Medic, can't risk it. Not Jong, same reason. Not Yonja, she'd go if offered, but no. "I'll go," said Junso from the corner. Everyone looked at him. "I run faster than any of you," he said evenly. "I've watched how you move. That's a fact." Minsok looked at him. He's right. 16 years old, long legs. If they needed to fall back fast, he'd make it. "Jacket," said Minsok. "Goggles, gloves, everything." Junso was already putting them on. The attic was dark and dusty. Minsok went first with a torch, Ichan behind him, Junso at the rear. The noise outside was louder here. The metal roof did not muffle the sound. Pulsing, alive, close. The ventilation hatch in the center. Minsok could see it from a distance, and he could see that the grate was vibrating. "There," he said quietly. "I see it." said Ichan just as quietly. They approached. Through the grate, a swarm was pressing from outside. Not chaotically, methodically. One hornet would find a gap, check it, pull back, the next would check a different gap. Like engineers searching for a weak point in a structure. They're testing the grate, said Junso quietly. Amazed. They're actually testing it. Yes, said Minsok. The longer you watch, the more frightening it becomes. Ichan was already pulling a metal plate, bolts, and a battery-powered drill from his backpack. You prepared in advance? Asked Junso. Yes, you prepared a metal plate in advance for sealing the ventilation hatch in the attic? Yes, because you knew it would be needed. Yes. A pause. How do you live with yourself, said Junso. Unclear whether with admiration or mild horror. Fine, said Minsok. Hold the torch. Ichan si. Drill. The drill was quiet. Battery-powered, Minsok had specifically chosen one with a minimum noise level. Even so, the hornets outside reacted. The swarm densified, the pressure on the grate increased. Faster, said Minsok. I'm trying, said Ichan. First bolt, second, third. The grate began to buckle inward. The hornets had found the point of maximum pressure and focused on it. There's a gap, said Junso. Upper left corner, one is almost... Minsok retrieved from the storage quickly 3 seconds of concentration, a can of insecticide. Aimed it at the gap, pressed. The sound outside changed. Shrill, angry, agitated. Does that anger them or stop them? Asked Junso. The second, said Minsok. But the first two. Ichan si. Last bolt. Ichan was tightening it. Done. The metal plate was laid over the grate. The hatch was sealed. Outside, an angry drone. The swarm battered against the metal for several seconds. Then slowly, reluctantly, it began to retreat. All three stood and listened as the sound faded. Junso exhaled. That was the first day, he said. Yes, said Minsok. What happens on the second? Rodents, said Minsok. Rats start on the second day, the size of a Labrador. Smart. Smart rats. Smart rats. A pause. I was supposed to be at school today, said Junso. Not sadly, just stating it. A math test. Ichan looked at him. Do you like math? Yes. Good, said Ichan. In an apocalypse, math is useful. What for? Calculating how much food will last for how many people, said Ichan. The trajectory of a swarm's movement. The distance between bases. He put the drill away in his backpack. A lot of things. Junso looked at him. That sounds like... He searched for the words. Like the apocalypse is just problems, just with different conditions. Exactly, said Minsok. Let's go. By evening, the swarms had retreated. Not disappeared, just changed pattern. At night, insects are less active, even mutated ones. Minsok knew this from the first life. It gave a window. Small but real. 4 hours of nightly quiet, he told the group. Roughly from 2 to 6 in the morning, minimum insect activity. That's time to move if needed. Do we need to? Asked Hana. Not yet. The base is holding. He opened the storage catalog, looked through it. Today's expenditures were minimal. Supplies for 3 months for 6 people. 3 months? Junso looked at him. Approximately. And after? After. The situation will change. Either we'll find additional sources or other people with resources will join or... Minsok paused. Or the situation in the city will normalize enough to actively forage for food. Normalize, repeated Zhonghui. Skeptically but without mockery. Relatively. He looked at her. In the first life on day 45, safe zones began to appear. People were banding together. Not perfectly, but structure was emerging. 45 days, said Yanya from the stove. She was already cooking dinner, something that smelled good. 3 months of food means a large buffer. A buffer is not a luxury, said Minsok. It's a negotiating position. In an apocalypse, a person with food is a person who has something to offer. And that means grounds for an agreement. You'll trade food? Asked Junso. Not trade. Use it as a resource for building alliances. Minsok paused. The difference is that trading is a transaction. An alliance is a structure. A structure lasts longer. Junso looked at him with the expression Minsok remembered. The look of someone processing information who hadn't finished yet. You think like a manager, he said at last. I am a manager of the apocalypse, a warehouse manager of the apocalypse, Minsok corrected. More precisely. Junso thought about it. That's better than it sounds, I know. After dinner, which was unexpectedly good considering Yanja was working with canned goods and basic spices, Minsok sat in a corner and opened his notebook. Day Z summary, base intact, perimeter sealed. Group, 6 people. All alive, all fine. Storage expenditures, minimal. Threats. Swarm discovered the building, tested the hatch, retreated. Hatch sealed. New mutation continues. Animals are growing smarter in real time. This is worse than I thought in the first iteration. I assumed mutation was a one-time event. He stopped at the last line. Animals keep getting smarter. That means what worked against them 3 months ago in the first life may not work now. Behavioral patterns will change. The traps I remember, they'll learn to circumvent them faster. This changes a great deal. He wrote at the end, question for tomorrow. How quickly do they adapt to standard defensive measures? Second question, if they keep getting smarter, is there a limit? Third question, what happens if mutant intelligence reaches a level where they begin deliberately hunting specific individuals rather than simply attacking anything that moves? He underlined the third question. That's a frightening question. Think. At 2317, when everyone was already asleep or trying to sleep, Minsok sat alone by a small window. Outside, silence. That particular kind of silence that comes when the familiar sounds of the city have disappeared and something else has filled the space. Not sound, the absence of sound. No cars, no voices, no music from windows. Only far to the south, something low and arrhythmic. Most likely a swarm at rest, or something larger, phone in his pocket. For the last 2 hours, he had been periodically checking the network. The signal was there, unstable, but there. A few news sites were still up. He read, Seoul, Busan, Incheon, Daegu. Everywhere, the same thing. The photos were blurry as people had filmed on the run with trembling hands, but clear enough to see. Streets covered in a dark, moving carpet of dots. Cockroaches. A swarm above a shopping center. Hornets. Something large that had flipped a bus. The photo was smeared, unclear what exactly. Under one photo, a comment. This is my neighborhood. We've locked ourselves in the apartment. Insects under the door. What do we do? Minsok looked at the screen. Millions of people are asking that question tonight. What do we do? The first day and already. In the first life, I didn't think about it this broadly. I thought about myself, my group, the next 24 hours. That's the right tactic for survival. Focus on the near horizon. But if you think further ahead, a month, 3 months, isolated survivors aren't enough. You need structure, a network, multiple bases connected to each other, sharing resources and information. In the first life, I started building this in the second month. It went slowly through conflicts and mistrust. This time, start earlier? System storage. Host has been awake for 22 hours. Recommendation, sleep. Base is secured, group is sleeping. Threats in the next 4 hours are low. Thinking can wait until tomorrow. You're counting my sleep hours again, said Minsok quietly. The system counts everything. It's a catalog function. You're cataloging my sleep. The host is part of the survival system. The host condition is a critical resource. A tired manager makes errors in calculations. The host died from dehydration in iteration 1. The system does not want a repeat. A long pause. You're worried, said Minsok. The system optimizes. That is not worry, that is logistics. Understood. He closed his phone, lay down on an improvised mattress, rolled up jackets, sufficient. Good night. Good night, host. Let's try not to die this time. Minsok closed his eyes. In the corner, Junso breathed quietly. Yonja slept evenly, like someone accustomed to sleeping wherever they could. Hana stirred occasionally, scrolling something in the dark, probably the tablet. Ichan wasn't sleeping. Minsok could tell from the breathing. Just lying there, looking at the ceiling. A military habit, don't sleep the first night in a new place. Outside the walls, the silence of the apocalypse. Day Z is over, Minsok thought, falling asleep. 210 days ahead, at minimum. This time I won't die of thirst on a wet floor in an industrial zone. This time, differently. He fell asleep. Day 2, 7:30 in the morning. Ichan woke him at 7:30. Without words, just touched him on the shoulder. Minsok opened his eyes immediately without transition. In an apocalypse, the habit of waking instantly develops quickly. He looked at Ichan. The man nodded toward the door. They stepped out into the adjacent room, small, previously a technical anteroom. "Rats," said Ichan quietly. "Where?" "Outside at the eastern wall. I can hear them." A pause. "I've heard rats before. This isn't that. This is a different sound." "Communication," said Minsok. "They're talking to each other." Ichan looked at him. "Rats talk to each other." "Mutated ones, yes. Ultrasound, but in more complex patterns than before the mutation." Minsok thought. "How many?" "By the sound, a lot. Not a swarm, but a pack. Maybe 20, maybe more. Size? I don't know. Haven't seen them." Minsok opened his notebook. Wrote quickly. Day 2. Rats at the eastern wall? A pack? Time 7:30. Communicative behavior. Question. Are they searching for food or scouting territory? "Ichan SC," he said. "In the first life, rats attacked buildings on the second day only if there was a smell of food inside. If there was no smell, they moved around the building and kept going. We have a smell of food." Yonja closed the pot. "But yes, it lingered in the air." "What do we do?" "Wait. Observe. Don't go outside." Minsok put away the notebook. "If they find the entrance, we have an answer." "What answer?" Minsok retrieved a small container from the storage, placed it on the table. Ichan looked at it. "What is that?" "A deterrent compound," said Jong from the doorway. She had also woken up and was listening. An ultrasonic repellent in a chemical carrier. She picked up the container. "I made 3 batches while you were sleeping." Minsok slowly turned to her. "While I was sleeping? There's a lab bench in your storage, basic equipment, components." She shrugged. "I'm a chemist. Insomnia is occupational. Will it work against mutated ones?" "I don't know," Jong said honestly. "Haven't tested it. But the compound acts on olfactory receptors. If the mutation hasn't drastically altered the receptors, it should work. And if it has, then they'll ignore it and we'll solve the problem differently." Minsok looked at her. "You synthesized a repellent against mutated rats in the middle of the night. 3 batches, different concentrations. Effectiveness testing. That's..." He searched for the word. "Productive," she offered. "I was thinking unexpected, but yes, productive." Hana appeared in the doorway behind Jong. "I heard rats," she said. "I have an idea about their biology." Junso followed, disheveled from sleep with a tablet. "I spent all night calculating the movement pattern of the swarms from yesterday's data. There's a pattern." Last came Yonja with a pot. "Breakfast is ready. We eat first?" Minsok looked at all 5 of them who had come into 6 square meters of technical anteroom with ideas, data, food, and a chemical repellent. "In the first life, I worked alone for the first 2 days. I thought it was safer. Fewer people, less risk. That was a mistake." "All right," he said, "we eat. Then all data on the table. We work together." Outside at the eastern wall, 23 mutated rats the size of Labradors were methodically testing the perimeter of the building. They hadn't found a weak point yet, but they were looking, and they were smarter than yesterday. Inventory. Day 3, 2:14 at night. The activity window ran from 2 to 6 in the morning. Minsok knew this precisely. In the first life, he had confirmed it on his own skin several times. In darkness and cold, insects became sluggish. They didn't sleep. Insects don't sleep. But they moved more slowly, swarmed less frequently, reacted with a delay, 4 hours, every night, a small window. But their lives now consisted of small windows. "No," said Ichan. "Yes," said Minsok. "We don't know what's outside. That's exactly why we need to go out and find out. That's the logic of a man who wants to die. That's the logic of a man who understands. Sitting inside without knowing what's happening out there is more dangerous than one careful reconnaissance run." Minsok spread a paper map on the table. "Here's the base. Here's a shop 180 meters to the west. In the first life, there was an untouched storeroom there. Pharmacy goods, canned food, water. I know this place. Ichan looked at the map. 180 meters. There and back, 3.5 minutes at a brisk pace. 5 if careful. What about the rats? Rats are at the eastern wall. The shop is to the west. A pause. Junso stays here, said Ichan finally. That's not up for debate. Agreed. Hana and Jong too. Agreed. Yonja, see? I'm going, said Yonja from the corner. She was sitting and cleaning a knife, calmly, methodically, like someone who settled everything long ago. Ichan looked at her. Do you know how to handle a knife? Son, said Yeonja without looking up, I cooked on an army field kitchen for 20 years. A knife was the first thing I got acquainted with. Before the alphabet. Ichan looked at Minsok. Minsok shrugged. 3 of us, said Ichan. You, me, her. Let's go. Me. Outside it was cold. December. Seoul in winter is a damp, biting cold that gets under your jacket no matter how thick it is. The leather jackets didn't handle the cold well, but they held against the hornets. Minsok stood at the door and listened. The silence was present, but alive. Not dead. Somewhere far to the east, a rustling, low and broad. The rat pack hadn't gone. I'm just gone quiet until morning. Waiting, he thought, or sleeping, or planning. That last thought was unpleasant. Let's go, he said quietly. 180 meters, 30 seconds at a quick pace. Minsok went first, Ichan behind and slightly to the side, Yonja bringing up the rear. No torches. The moon gave enough, and there was no point attracting attention. The street was strange. Empty, that was expected. But not just empty. Broken glass in a couple of windows, an overturned trash bin, tracks on the asphalt. Plenty of them, small, frequent, clearly rat, but the size of a dog's. Ichan stopped, crouched, shone a small torch on the tracks. 12 to 15 individuals, he said quietly. Passed through here about 2 hours ago. Which direction? North. North is a residential area. Minsok noted it. Let's go. The shop was called Happy Mart, a small chain, 3 like it in the area. The display window was intact. The door was closed but not locked. The lock had been forced from the outside. Someone had been here before. Ichan looked inside first, waited, nodded. They went in. A smell. The specific smell of a shop plus something sour, and traces of presence, whose unclear. The shelves were partly emptied, chaotically, quickly, without system. Bread, milk, the obvious things, taken. But the canned goods, most of them still in place. Bottled water, almost all of it. In a panic, people take the familiar. Bread, milk, what they eat every day. They think about canned goods later. When later comes, it's already too late. Minsok started working quickly. Pulled 3 large bags from the storage. Started loading. Canned goods methodically by type. Stewed meat, canned fish, legumes, tomato paste. Water, all the bottles from the bottom shelf. Yonja appeared beside him in silence, arms already full. Salt, vegetable oil, vacuum-packed grains. You've got a good eye, said Minsok quietly. A cook looks at what keeps long, she said just as quietly. Oil, grains, salt. That's the base. From the base, you can make anything. Ichan stood at the door, listening. A minute later, he said quietly, Movement. North. Approaching. Minsok straightened up. How far? About 80 meters? Moving slowly. Rats? I don't know. Different sound. Different. Not rats. So, a person or a bird? At night, birds are less active too, so a person. 30 more seconds, said Minsok. Kept loading. Storage. Update. Added, canned goods 47 kilograms, water 38 liters, grains 12 kilograms, oil 6 liters, salt 4 kilograms. New catalog entries 94. Expansion progress 94 out of 100. Until next plus 1 cubic meter, 6 entries. Let's go, said Ichan. 1 second. Minsok added the last 6 entries. 6 packs of instant coffee from the bottom shelf. Storage expansion plus 1 cubic meter. Current volume 135.6 cubic meters. Congratulations, you added coffee as the 600th entry. The system approves of the priorities. Now let's go, said Minsok. The movement from the north turned out to be a person. They ran into each other at the exit, literally. Minsok opened the shop door and nearly walked into a figure outside. Both froze. Ichan instantly positioned himself to the side, hand on the knife handle. The figure, a woman about 45 in a winter coat, a large tote bag in her hands, face frightened but not panicked, eyes appraising. She looked at them, they at her. 5 seconds of silence. Are you from this neighborhood? The woman asked first. Voice even. Controlled. No, said Minsok. You? Yes. She didn't move. Are you looters? No. Then what are you doing in a shop at 2 in the morning? The same thing as you, said Minsok. Taking what's needed while we can. A pause. You don't have bags, she said. Where did you put what you took? Minsok looked at her. Observant. Noticed immediately. Long story, he said. The woman looked at him for another second, then shifted her gaze to the shop door. Is there still anything left in there? Yes, the canned goods are mostly untouched. Good. She stepped toward the door. Stopped. There's a family in there. 2 children, a husband, and a mother-in-law. We're in an apartment on the 3rd floor. Last night, the rats broke down a neighbor's door on the ground floor. The neighbors are gone. Whether the door was broken from inside or outside, unclear. Minsok listened. From inside or outside? She said unclear. That's important. If from inside, the rats got in and the neighbors didn't get out. If from outside, and the neighbors had already left and the rats broke into the empty apartment afterward. At night, rats breaking down doors. Day 2 and they're already breaking down doors. How long have you been inside? Asked Minsok. Since morning yesterday. The day before. She shook her head. I'm losing track. Since yesterday morning. The children, how are they? Frightened. Hungry. There's a little food at home, but enough for a day at most. Minsok thought for 3 seconds. Ichan, he said. Yes. Take from the shelves what she won't be able to carry herself. Ichan was already moving into the shop. The woman looked at Minsok. You help strangers? Yes, why? Because that's how the structure I'm building works, said Minsok. Give me your apartment address. Why? Because in 3 days you'll need help again. And in a week too. Better to know the address in advance. The woman looked at him for a long moment. Apartment 305, she said. Building 8 on this street. Good. My name is Cho Minsok. Remember it. Park Sung-ni, she said. You're a strange man, Cho Minsok. Yes, he agreed. People say that often. They returned to the base at 3:20. Inside, no one was sleeping. Everyone sat and waited. Junso jumped up when the door opened. Everything all right? He asked. He was trying to sound calm. It wasn't quite working. Fine, said Minsok. Write this down. He tossed him the notebook. Building 8, apartment 305. Family, 5 people, 2 children. Supplies for 1 day, Junso wrote. Is that base 2? For now, a contact. We'll see. Junso looked at him. You went for food and came back with a contact. And with food too, said Minsok. Storage, day 3 summary. New entries, 94 new volume, 135.6 cubic meters. New contacts, 1, Park Sung-ni 45, family of 5. Outing analysis, no threats encountered. Rats inactive in the 2 to 6 window. Confirmed birds inactive. Confirmed first contact outside the perimeter. Obtained recommendation, repeat outings every 2 to 3 nights. A map of contacts is more important than a map of threats. Additional note, host bought coffee on the first nighttime run. The system refrains from comment. The system refrains from comment, Minsok read aloud. What? Asked Hana. Nothing. A conversation with the system. You talk to the system? It started it. Hana looked at him with the expression of someone who had decided not to ask the next question. Day 7, noon. On the 7th day, people came. Not Park Sung-ni. She had already become a regular contact, coming through the back door every other day, bringing information about her block in exchange for medications and a little food. A fair exchange. Honest. These were different. There were 7 of them, men, all young, from 20 to 30. They came in the daytime, loudly, without caution. One was carrying a crowbar. Ichan spotted them through the small window near the ceiling a few minutes before they approached. 7, he said quietly. One armed. The others, hands free, coming toward us. Sure they're coming here? There's nowhere else to go in this block, Minseok thought. 7 of them. Day 7. In the first life, the first conflict with an armed group was on day 12, earlier. Meaning they're more active, or hungrier, or worse. They've already figured out they need to look for people with supplies. Ichan see, said Minseok. You and Yeonja receive them. No visible weapons. Why no weapons? Because a knife on your belt is a provocation. Empty hands. That's a conversation. A pause. Conversation first, and if it's not a conversation? Then Jonghui opens the side door and you come in from both sides. Ichan looked at him. You think like a tactician. I think like a manager, said Minseok. In negotiations, what matters is who has the stronger position. Ours is stronger. They just don't know that yet. The conversation began in a standard way. The leader of the 7, a man of about 28, broad shoulders, tired face, spoke confidently. Rehearsed. Like someone who had said this several times before. We need food and water. He stood at the door, the other 6 behind him. We know you have it. Hand it over voluntarily and we'll leave without trouble. Ichan stood in the doorway, Yeonja slightly to the side, both with the air of people this situation didn't particularly worry. How do you know we have it? Asked Ichan. We saw you coming in with bags 3 days ago. We watched. From the first day or later, unclear. But they watched. Understood, said Ichan. Wait. He closed the door, turned to Minseok, who was standing behind the wall 3 meters away and had heard everything. Your move. Minseok came out, opened the door, looked at the 7 men. My name is Cho Minseok, he said. I'm prepared to give you food. The leader looked at him. Hadn't expected this? The tension eased slightly. No conditions? He asked carefully. With conditions, the tension returned. What conditions? Simple ones. Minseok looked at him evenly. I give food once for free. That's an advance of trust. After that, we talk about what you know how to do and what you can offer in return. Not now, later when you've eaten and rested. A pause. Leave the crowbar outside. A long silence. The man looked at him. Then at Ichan. Then back at Minseok. You're not afraid of us, he said slowly. I am, Minseok said honestly. But there are things scarier than 7 hungry men. Like what? 7 mutated hornets in an enclosed space, said Minseok. Or 1 rat the size of a Labrador in a dark corridor. Compared to that, you're a manageable threat. A pause. One of the 7, a younger one, about 22, unexpectedly let out a short laugh. Cut himself off. Manageable threat, the leader repeated. Something shifted in his face. You're unusual. Warehouse manager, said Minseok. We have professional deformation. The man looked at him for another second, turned, said to someone behind him, Sonu, put the crowbar down. Over food. Yeonja put out 2 large pots of rice with canned meat without extra words. Minseok sat across from the leader and talked. His name was Park Taeol, 28 years old. Before the apocalypse, a construction worker. The other 6, neighbors who had banded together by chance on the first day when they evacuated from one apartment into the stairwell and realized you couldn't go out alone. 7 days without a proper base? Asked Minseok. Yes, changed shelter every day or 2. Why didn't you establish yourself in one place? Rats found us twice. Taeol was eating quickly, hungry. On the 3rd day in the first shelter, they gnawed through the wall, literally. A concrete wall, like what they gnawed through it. A concrete wall. Day 3. Minseok showed nothing to indicate it concerned him, but he noted it mentally. The mutation is continuing, faster than in the first life. In the first iteration, rats were gnawing through concrete by day 20. Here it's day 3. What can you do? He asked. Professionally. Taeol looked at him. Why does that matter? Because I'm going to offer you a place here, said Minseok. But I need to know what use you'll be. And if we don't want to be here? Then you'll leave with food and the address of this base in case you change your mind. Minsok looked at him. No hard feelings. The choice is yours, Tile thought. Construction worker, he said finally. I'm a construction worker. I know structures, materials, reinforcement. Minsok looked at him. A construction worker. Reinforcement. The base is built from a standard warehouse space, metal and concrete, but without additional reinforcement. If rats are gnawing through concrete by day 3, then by next week our walls? Of the 7, he said. Who does what? Taeyul looked back at his group. Sanho, electrician. Minjin worked in security. The rest? He shrugged. Ordinary people. Ordinary people know how to do different things, said Minsok. Sanho, that's important. We have a problem with backup power. He looked at Taeyul. Stay. 7 people. 7 additional mouths. That's real expenditure from the supplies, but a construction worker, an electrician, and a security guard. That pays for itself. And the other 4? The other 4 are 4 pairs of hands and 4 minds. Minsok stood up. We'll see what they know how to think. Junso appeared beside Minsok while he was looking at the floor plan. There are 7 of them, he said quietly. I know. Now there are 13 of us. Yes, supplies for 3 months at 6 people. That's 1.5 months at 13. The math is right, said Minsok. Doesn't that worry you? No. Minsok looked at the plan. Because 13 people will find more than 6. That's math too. Junso was quiet for a moment. And if they turn out to be unreliable? Then we'll find out, said Minsok calmly. Better to find out here under controlled conditions than when they come back from outside a second time. Not with a conversation. Junso looked at him. You took them in because it's better to have them inside. Partly. What else? Minsok paused. Because Taeyul spent 7 days protecting 6 strangers without a base, without a system, without supplies. A pause. That's not about calculation, that's about character. And in an apocalypse, character is one of the few resources that doesn't run out. Junso thought about it. You said you weren't a leader, I did. But that's exactly what you're doing. I'm doing logistics, said Minsok. Logistics just sometimes looks like leadership. Day 10, night. On the 10th day, the system updated. Minsok hadn't expected this. In the first life, there were no systems at all. He woke at 3 in the morning with the feeling that something had changed. The way you wake up when your phone vibrates in your sleep and you open your eyes not knowing why. Text appeared before him. System, storage, update 1.1. Elapsed 10 days. Catalog entries 1,847. Storage volume 168.47 cubic meters. People under host management 13. Iteration analysis. Host is performing significantly more efficiently than in iteration. 1 at the same period. Group formed functional threats, repelled without losses. External perimeter contacts. 2. Park Sunungi plus family, Park Taeyul plus group. Unlocked. Threat analysis function. Description. The system can analyze mutant behavior if the host provides sufficient observations. Principle. The more data, the more accurate the analysis. Data input. Via catalog. Add observations as entries. Example. Rat approximately 40 kilograms. Gnawed through concrete wall 7 millimeters in 4 minutes. Day 3. Add to catalog as an observation entry. The system will process it and produce a forecast. Note, the system has become smarter because the host has become smarter at using the system, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. Minsok read this in the dark. Threat analysis. If I systematically record observations, the system builds a forecast of mutant behavior. Hana had been collecting data. Junso had been building pattern diagrams. Jong had been documenting biochemistry. Now all of it can be loaded into the system. He got up, quietly without waking anyone. Took his notebook. Began transferring everything recorded over 10 days into the catalog. Each observation as a separate entry. Hornet swarm approximately 200 individuals. Reacts to food smell from 300 meters. Day 1, time 1540. Lone rat, approximately 35 kilograms. Bypassed bait trap. Day 2, 0815. Hornet swarm nighttime activity reduced 80% in window 2 to 6. Confirmed 3 nights in a row. Rats, ultrasound communication, coordinated attack recorded, day 3. Lone crow, approximately 5 kilograms, memorized human route and followed for 400 meters, day 2. He worked for 2 hours. By the end, the system produced its first analysis. Observations processed, 47 forecast, next 7 days. Insects, swarm activity stabilizing. Peak has passed, transition from sweeping to territorial control expected by days 14 to 16. Significance, swarms will establish fixed control over specific blocks. Movement between zones is dangerous. Rodents, concrete gnaw rate 7 millimeters per 4 minutes, day 3, to forecast, 15 millimeters per 4 minutes by day 20. Hour walls, concrete block 120 millimeters. Estimated time to breach by day 20, approximately 32 minutes. Priority, perimeter reinforcement. Birds, daytime threat increasing. By day 15, aerial control over open spaces. Recommendation, limit daytime outings. Critical warning, by days 20 to 25, the first interspecies interaction is expected. Hornets and rats are demonstrating overlapping hunting patterns. Coordinated attacks are possible. This is unconfirmed. This is a forecast based on intelligence development trajectories. The system recommends taking this seriously. Minsok sat in the dark and looked at the last paragraph. Interspecies coordination, hornets and rats hunting together. In the first life, I saw this on day 53. Thought it was a coincidence. 2 separate attacks overlapping. Now the system says it's expected. It's not a coincidence. It's the next stage of evolution. Hana see, he said quietly. Hana, who also wasn't sleeping, sitting with the tablet in the corner, looked up. What? Tomorrow morning. I need all your data on mutant behavior, all observations, in detail. Why? Because by day 20 we need to be prepared for what I wasn't prepared for until day 53 in the first life, said Minsok. She looked at him. What happened on day 53? A pause. The hornets drove people inside. The rats came in from below. Simultaneously. He looked into the darkness. We lost 2 people. A long silence. Understood, said Hana quietly. Tomorrow morning, all the data. At 5:30, just before dawn, Minsok woke Tayul. He opened his eyes instantly. 7 days without proper shelter develop reflexes. What? Show me the plan of our building, said Minsok. All the walls. Thickness, material, age of the structure. Now? Now. Tayul looked at him, then got up. Fine. They walked along the walls with a torch. Tayul touched, knocked, examined. Spoke quietly and precisely, professionally. Here it's standard concrete block, around the 70s. Here it's newer, 90s. This wall is weaker, there's a crack at the base, do you see it? Here there's a metal frame, that's good. How quickly can it be reinforced? Depends on the materials. Minsok opened the storage. Started retrieving metal sheets, rebar, industrial-grade mounting foam, and large canisters. Tail watched as materials appeared from the air. This is... He went quiet. Long story, said Minsok. Will you ever tell me this long story? When there's time. Tayul looked at the materials. Then, with a professional eye, businesslike, began assessing. The eastern and northern walls? A week's work. Serious reinforcement. If we work 6 people, 3 to 4 days. We have 10 days, said Minsok. Then we'll do it properly. Tayul lifted one of the metal sheets, assessed the weight, nodded. We start in the morning. We start now, said Minsok. There's still an hour before dawn. Quiet work. Tayul looked at him with the same expression Minsok had already seen several times tonight. Do you ever sleep? I do, said Minsok. The system monitors it. What? Long story. Outside, in the darkness of December Sol, the mutated world kept getting smarter. Rats at the eastern wall practiced gnawing through concrete. Hornets in the swarm to the north were responding to chemical signals from the rats. Somewhere in the sky, a crow the size of an eagle had memorized the location of the warehouse. They were all memorizing. They were all getting smarter. But inside, 13 people were working. And one warehouse manager was looking at a storage catalog that now held over 2,000 entries and thinking 20 days ahead. Which, in an apocalypse, is a very long time. Inventory, day 15, 4:30 in the morning. Minseok woke to Junso shaking him by the shoulder. Not gently, hard. He opened his eyes and saw the boy's face in the torchlight. Pale, not frightened. Worse than that. Focused in that particular way. You focus when the fear has already passed and only the task remains. Sunungi, said Junso quietly. She called. Minseok sat up. What happened? Rats in the building, not outside. Inside. They gnawed their way in through the basement. Junso spoke evenly. Too evenly for 16. She said 3 children, husband on the upper floor, mother-in-law can't walk. Her voice cut out mid-sentence. Minseok was already getting up. Day 15. The system had forecast the breach by day 20. Off by 5 days. Either the mutation is moving faster than the forecast, no time to analyze. Ichan, he said into the dark. Already here, came the voice from the door. Ichan hadn't been sleeping, or had woken earlier, or hadn't lain down at all. The second was more likely. Sunungi, Building 8, Apartment 305. Rats inside the building. I know, heard. Let's go. 2 of us isn't enough, said Ichan. Rats inside a building, that's not the street. Taeyul, said Minseok. I'm here, Taeyul answered from the dark. He also hadn't been sleeping. Construction workers rise early. Apparently even an apocalypse can't cure that. Is Sanho asleep? No. 4's enough, said Minseok. Everyone else stays at the base. Don't open the doors. Outside it was cold and quiet. The activity window, 2 to 6, was still holding. Insects sluggish, birds sleeping. But rats were nocturnal. The window didn't apply to them. Minseok knew this. It was just that in the first days, the rats had been occupied with other territories. Now they'd arrived. Now, Building 8, 120 meters from the base. Straight, then right. 1 minute at a brisk pace. They moved quickly close to the walls of the buildings. Torches on minimum, just enough light for the ground. Taeyul carried the crowbar, that same one. Ichan carried a knife, long, serious. Sanho, a young guy of about 23, the electrician, carried a metal rod and looked at it the way you look at something you very much hope you won't have to use. Minseok, the storage on his back in the form of a pack, and 3 seconds of concentration to reach anything needed inside it. In a fight, 3 seconds is a very long time. So, but beforehand. He stopped for a second, retrieved from the storage 4 items, powerful torches, 1 each, and 4 pairs of thick leather gloves. Hands, he said quietly. They put them on in silence. Building 8. The entrance door wide open, not forced, opened, by someone from inside, in a hurry. Minseok entered first. A smell, specific. Sharp, animal, musky. The smell of rats, but amplified, as if the concentration of a normal smell multiplied by the size. There were many of them, more than just a scouting pack. The staircase, ground floor. The door of the neighboring apartment, the one Sunungi had mentioned, forced open, neighbors gone, was now completely off its hinges. From inside the apartment, rustling. Ichan shone a torch. Movement in the darkness of the apartment. Several pairs of eyes reflected the light. Reddish, bright, wrongly bright. Don't look them directly in the eyes, said Minseok quietly. They respond to direct eye contact as a challenge. How do you know? Sanho whispered. First life, said Minseok. They walked past. Quietly, steadily, without looking directly. The rustling in the apartment did not intensify. The rats did not come out. They're full, Minseok understood. They've already eaten. Better not to think about what. 3rd floor, apartment 305, door closed, tight. Quiet from inside. Minseok knocked. 3 times. A pause. 2 more. Silence. Then rustling on the other side of the door. A whisper. Who's there? Cho Minseok, he said quietly. You called. A long pause. Then the sound of a bolt. Sunungi opened the door. She was fine physically, a scratch on her arm, covered with a bandage. Eyes tired, not frightened. Like someone who has accepted the situation and is working with what there is. Behind her, deeper in the apartment. Children. 2 of them. A boy of about 10 and a girl of about 7. Sitting on the sofa, pressed against each other. Looking. Husband? Minseok asked quietly. Upper floor. He went for the mother-in-law before they came in. Sunungi spoke quietly and evenly. Phone not answering since 1 in the morning. The mother-in-law who can't walk. Yes, 4th floor, apartment 401. Minsok looked at her. Ichan si, he said. Yes, 4th floor, understood. Taeyul, yeah, with him. Sanho, here. Minsok entered the apartment. Sunungi si. How many did you see when you saw them? 4. Large. She showed with her hands. Roughly the size of a Labrador. They came in through the basement window. I heard them moving up the staircase. They stopped on the ground floor. There's an apartment down there that's been empty for a long time. I know, said Minsok. They're there now. What did they do when... She started and stopped herself. Looked at the children. Rephrased. Why didn't they come higher? They're full. For now. Minsok looked at the children. The girl looked at him with the expression children use when looking at unfamiliar adults in a bad situation, appraisingly without childlike trust. That's right. We need to leave this building, now, while they're downstairs. Where to? To us. The base is 120 meters away. Sunungi looked at him. You offered this before. You refused. I didn't want to leave my apartment. I understand, said Minsok. But your apartment is no longer safe. A long pause. My husband, she said. Ichan-si is going for him. The mother-in-law can't walk. I'll get a stretcher, said Minsok. He opened the storage 3 seconds and retrieved a folding military-issue stretcher. Sunungi watched as it appeared from the air. You've wanted to ask for a long time? Since the first time, she admitted. I'll explain later. Take the children. Only what's essential. Ichan and Taeyul returned from the 4th floor 8 minutes later. With them, Sunungi's husband. Lee Chansu, 40 years old, mechanical engineer. Face cut up. Not rats, he'd fallen in the dark. Holding together, and an elderly woman on the stretcher, the mother-in-law, Gwon Yunsug, 72 years old, a hip fracture that hadn't been properly treated before day X. Did any rats come up? Minsok asked Ichan quietly. 1. On the staircase between the 2nd and 3rd floors. A pause. We passed each other. Passed each other. Taeyul convinced it that going the other way was a better idea. Minsok looked at Taeyul. Taeyul silently held up the crowbar. Understood, said Minsok. The crossing, 120 meters, took 4 minutes. Those were long 4 minutes. Gwon Eun-suk on the stretcher didn't weigh much, but the pace slowed. The children walked themselves, quickly, without talking, as though they understood that now was not the time. From below, from Building 8, when they were already about 40 meters away, a sound. Low, several voices at once. Rat communication. They had found that apartment 305 was empty. Moving higher. Minsok didn't look back. Don't look back. Keep walking. The base, the door, inside, the bolt. Hana took Gwon Eun-suk immediately, as professionally without extra words. Examined the fracture, shook her head, pulled out medications. Yeonja was already heating water. Junso stood by the wall and looked at the children. The girl looked at him. What's your name? He asked. Lee Ae-ryum, said the girl. I'm Junso. Are you hungry? A pause. Yes. Yeonja Si is making rice. It'll be ready soon. The girl looked at him for another second. Then she relaxed her shoulders slightly. A 16-year-old talking to a 7-year-old in an apocalypse. Minsok watched this and thought, this is also a resource. This is also part of the structure. Not food, not walls, not a weapon. Just a person who knows how to talk to a child in a way that makes the child relax her shoulders. You can't calculate it. You can't put it in the storage. But without it, everything else loses its meaning. Lee Chansu, Sunungi's husband, came to Minsok near dawn. Sat down beside him. Was quiet for a long time. You saved my family, he said at last. We went out and brought you back, said Minsok. That's not heroism, that's logistics. To me, it's heroism. Minsok looked at the reinforcement diagram Taeyul had drawn the day before. You're a mechanical engineer, he said. Yes, mechanics, structures, how machines work. Yes, used to work in manufacturing. I have a generator in the storage. Minsok looked at him. Sanho is the electrician. He understands the wiring. But a generator is mechanics. We need independent power. Chansu looked at him. You're offering me a job right now. Yes, we just arrived. I know. Minsuk met his gaze. Rest. Eat. Look around, see what's here and how things work. Then, if you want, we'll talk about the generator. Chansu was quiet. Why do you do this? He asked quietly. All of this. The base, the people, the system. Because in the first life I died alone on a wet floor, and the last thing I thought was, should have taken more water, said Minsuk. That's a bad last thought. This time I want to be thinking about something else. A pause. About what? Minsuk looked at the diagram. I don't know yet, but not yet is already progress. Day 45. In the first life, day 45 was when the first safe zones appeared, when people started organizing, when the chaos of the first weeks began to take shape. In this life, day 45 looked like this. The base. Not a warehouse anymore, not a warehouse anymore. Tayol and Chensu had turned it into something else over the course of a month. Reinforced walls, metal sheets over concrete, rebar bracing, sealed gaps and cracks. The generator ran quietly in the far section. Sanho had run lighting to every room, dim, economical, but constant. Hana had set up a medical corner, clean, with labeled shelves. Guan Yunsuk moved on homemade crutches. Hana had made them from wooden planks and leather straps. The fracture was healing slowly but healing. Yonja had turned the kitchen corner into something that smelled of food 3 times a day without exception. It seemed like a small thing. It was not a small thing. The smell of normal food 3 times a day kept people in a state of, this is not the end. Yonja understood this better than anyone and did it in silence. People. 18. Park Tail had become the de facto site foreman, organizing work, distributing tasks, speaking briefly and precisely. He no longer carried the crowbar, he'd taken proper tools from the storage. Said the crowbar was for last resorts. The last resort hadn't come yet. Lee Chansu had the generator running on the 3rd day after arriving. Then he modified it, cut the noise by 40%. Then he started thinking aloud about a wind turbine on the roof. Minsuk listened and didn't interfere. On day 28, Junso brought Minsuk a handwritten sheet. Pattern diagram of rat roots, he said, over the last 2 weeks. They're not random, they have roots. Like bus lines, just mean. Minsuk looked at the sheet. You've been building this for 2 weeks? Yes, alone? Yes, why didn't you say you were working on it? Junso shrugged, wanted to check that it worked first, so as not to look stupid. 16 years old, an apocalypse the first month, and he's worried about looking stupid. That's not stupid, said Minsuk. That's valuable. A pause. Don't work alone on things like this anymore. Next time, say something. Hana has behavioral data, the system has analysis. Together is more accurate. Junso nodded. All right. And Junso. Yes? Your mom has been found. Minsuk looked at him. A shopping center in the Uljiro district. A group of 30 people. Contact established through Sunungi Sea 3 days ago. She's alive. A long silence. Junso looked at the route diagram in his hands. You've known for 3 days and didn't say anything? I was checking first that it was definitely her. A pause. It's definitely her. Junso lowered the sheet. When can I see her? We're establishing connections between groups. A meeting of representatives is coming up soon. Minsuk looked at him. You'll go. Together with you? You'll go as a representative of our group, said Minsuk. Not a passenger. A representative. Junso looked at him. 16 years old. In the first life, I found him in the ventilation ducts of a shopping center. Thin, alone, with the empty eyes of someone who had survived, but no longer understood why. Now he draws route diagrams, worries about looking stupid, and will be a group representative at negotiations. The difference. Day 45 and 2100. That evening, Minsuk sat alone. Everyone else was sleeping or occupied. Tayul and Chansu were talking quietly about the roof. Yeonja was washing dishes. Hana was writing notes. He opened the storage catalog. Storage status day 45. Catalog entries 6,847 volume, 218.47 centimeters. Resources: food, 2,140 kilograms. Consumption increased 18 people. Water, 980 liters. Medications, full set fuel, 180 liters. Generator consumption. Tools, 847 entries. Supply forecast at current consumption rate, 54 days. Threat analysis update, day 45. Hornet and rat coordination confirmed. Forecast validated. First case, day 41. Sinchon Shopping Center. Swarm drove group inside, rats entered from below. Our base not attacked. Probable reason, perimeter reinforcement plus Zhonghui's chemical repellent. New birds. Day 43. A crow observed watching the base from the roof across the street. 4 hours. Did not attack. This is not hunting. This is reconnaissance. Critical update. Behavioral analysis over 45 days shows non-linear growth in mutant intelligence. Forecast for days 60 to 70. Possible emergence of individuals with individual behavior. Not pack behavior, not swarm behavior, individual behavior. This means some mutants may be developing personal memory, personal goals, personal hunting strategies. The system cannot give a precise forecast of what this means, but recommends treating it as the most serious threat at the present moment. Minsuk read the last paragraph for a long time. Individual behavior, personal memory, personal strategies. An animal that remembers you specifically. An animal that hunts specifically for you. He looked into the darkness. In the first life, on day 180, he had seen something. A crow. Not a flock. One. That appeared for 3 days in a row exactly where he was going. Did not attack. Just watched. He had decided it was a coincidence at the time. A coincidence. It was not a coincidence. Quiet footsteps nearby. Hana sat across from him, set down 2 mugs. Tea. Yonjasi left them out. Thank you. They sat in silence. Outside the walls, quiet. Night. A calm night, which was itself now a gift. What are you thinking? Asked Hana. About what? You've been reading the system for 20 minutes and you have that look. She waved her hand. That look. What look? Like someone who has seen something in the data they don't like and is deciding whether to say it or not. Minsok looked at her. Observant. Always was. The animals are getting smarter in a non-linear way, he said. By day 60, individual behavior may emerge in some specimens, not pack behavior. Hana held her mug with both hands. Thinking. Individual, meaning what? Personal memory, personal goals, a pause. Personal enemies, a long silence. You think some animal could deliberately hunt a specific person? I think it's probable, and I think... He looked at his mug. The crow that watched the base for 4 hours on day 43 is not a coincidence. Hana looked at him. You think it memorized you? Or one of us? Minsok looked up. In the first life, there was one crow. On day 180, 3 days in a row. I decided it was a coincidence. And on day 183, it brought a flock. Silence. It brought them, Hana repeated slowly. Yes, they sat in silence. What will you do? She asked finally. Observe, collect data. Minsok looked into the darkness. I don't know how to fight an adversary that has personal memory and a personal goal. In the first life, I didn't have time to figure it out. A pause. In this one, I'll have to. That frightens you. Yes. Hana looked at him. He rarely said yes to direct questions about fear. Usually, it's manageable, it's a matter of working with data, it's a question of preparation. Yes was different. Good, she said. Then we'll figure it out together. Minsok looked at her. You're a veterinarian. I'm a specialist in animal behavior, she corrected. If any of them are developing individual strategies, that interests me professionally. A pause. It's frightening. But interesting. That's an unhealthy combination. The apocalypse is generally an unhealthy situation, said Hana. We'll adapt. Day 45, late at night. Minsok stood by the small window near the ceiling. The only one in the building that faced outside without protective metal? He had deliberately left it that way. Not for sentimental reasons, because sometimes you need to look at the street to remind yourself that out there a world still exists. Changed, dangerous, unpredictable, but existing. Seoul outside looked like Seoul. The same buildings, the same streets, the same streetlights that still worked in some blocks where the autonomous substations were holding. Just empty, quiet, with different life inside. Day 45. In the first life, day 45 was the middle. Not a beginning, not an end. Just a day when you already understood this would go on for a long time, but still couldn't see where it was all heading. In this life, day 45 was 18 people behind him. Reinforced walls, supplies for more than 50 days, a system that was getting smarter, a 16-year-old pattern analyst, a chemist who doesn't sleep and synthesizes repellents, a cook who makes proper food from nothing, a builder who thinks about a wind turbine, an engineer who cut the generator noise by 40%, a veterinarian who is frightened and curious at the same time, and a former soldier who is the first to stop sleeping and the last to open the door, and who in 45 days had never once said he was afraid. Though Minsuk sometimes heard him at night, lying motionless for a long time, staring at the ceiling. This is not a victory, this is not an end, nor the beginning of an end. This is a foothold. He looked at the street. On the roof of the building across, darkness, quiet. Then movement, small, quick, a silhouette. A bird. Large, even in the dark you could tell it was large. A crow. It sat on the edge of the roof opposite and looked at the window. At Minsuk, he looked at it. The same crow, or a different one, I don't know, but it's here, and it's watching. They looked at each other for several seconds. Then the crow, slowly, without hurry, as if having confirmed something, spread its wings and flew away. Dissolved into the darkness. System storage. Host, recorded. Repeat appearance of individual. Classification, crow, presumed to be the same as day 43. Behavior, observation, 40 seconds, voluntary departure. Behavior type, reconnaissance. This is already the second time. The third will be different. Recommendation, prepare. Additionally, day 45 completed without losses. All 18 are alive. This is a good day. Minsuk read the last lines. A good day. He closed the system screen. Behind him, a warm building, 18 people. The smell of rice Yonja had cooked for tomorrow. The quiet voices of Tayul and Chansu. The steady breathing of sleeping children. He looked into the darkness where the crow had flown. You'll come back, I know. But this time I'll be ready. He stepped away from the window, lay down, closed his eyes. Outside the window in December Seoul, in the empty streets of a changed world, something was getting smarter. Slowly, methodically, unstoppably. Rats were memorizing routes. Hornets were coordinating swarms. Birds were watching. And somewhere in the darkness for which there were no data, in the blind spots of the system, in the space between the known and the unknown, something new was forming. Something that hadn't existed in the first life. Something for which the system did not yet have a name. Cho Minsuk slept. 17 people beyond the wall did too. The storage ran quietly, cataloging, analyzing, waiting. 218 cubic meters of supplies. 6,847 entries. And one entry that could not be placed inside. Could not be cataloged. Could not be saved for later. Only used right now every day for as long as it lasted. 18 living people. That would be enough. For now, that would be enough.